Happy Friday, scholars. Welcome to your April 10th edition of your sixth grade Vista Virtual Lit class. Let's take a look at how we're doing with our turn-in rates. We went down 9% from yesterday to today, and I am not going to fuss at you watching this video, because if you're watching this video, this isn't on you. You've been doing your work. You've been doing your best. So keep that up. But again, like I always push, if you are in contact with your classmates on uh, Snapgram, reach out to them, tell them to get their work in. Right? Don't be wasting this time because we're not gonna get it back. A couple of students to spotlight today. This is Jada's evidence tracker. Remember yesterday we were just finding more evidence on whether juror 8 was successful in raising doubts among the other jurors. She found two good quotes that shows he was successful. She had on page 32, the second juror saying, "It's interesting that he'd find a knife exactly like the one the boy bought." And the ninth juror on page 35, "He didn't change his vote. I did." But she also found that some people are not convinced. They're sticking with their guilty vote. On the page 35, the third juror said, "We're trying to put a guilty man in the chair where he belongs." And the third juror again on page 33, "There are still 11 of us who think he's guilty." This is Isabella, her ASAC response. Check it out. A little bit of red, decent amount of yellow, mostly green. So let's see what she says. She said she agrees that he was successful because the eighth juror got one of the other 11 jurors to say not guilty. Here's her evidence. Quote's a little bit long, Isabella. It's a little bit long. We'll talk about what we could trim down after this. The eighth juror got the other 11 jurors to vote again if they think the boy is guilty. So good context that's catching us up to speed about what's going on as this quote happens. Quote, "Guilty, guilty, 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 not guilty." There's a babble of voices. Page 34. The eighth juror relaxes, moves to his chair, and sits. All right. What could be taken out of that quote to still get to what Isabella wanted to show, which was that it was mostly guilties and there was a not guilty? What could be taken out? If she's trying to prove that one of the guys changed his mind, I don't think it's necessary. That last sentence, the eighth juror relaxes and moves to his chair and sits. I don't think that's necessary to prove that the that one juror changed his mind. Um, there's a babble of voices. I don't know. What does that prove? That proves that people might be surprised. So you could convince me that it belongs in there. I don't know that it's necessary to have all of those guilties. Maybe I would have cut it down to like dot dot dot, guilty, guilty, guilty. But I definitely think that last sentence could have been removed. But let's look at the analysis. That proves that the eighth juror successfully raised doubt among his fellow jurors because he got one of the 11 jurors to vote not guilty. If the eighth juror didn't successfully raise doubt among his fellow jurors, he wouldn't have gotten one of the other 11 jurors to vote not guilty. That's a good analysis tool, guys, that Isabella just used. Whenever you want to prove your point, you could say, well, if this hadn't happened, you can kind of say, flip it on its head. If this hadn't happened, then this is what it would look like. So that was a good analysis tool. Most scholars also said the eighth juror was successful because one of the jurors changed his mind. I was surprised that no one argued that he wasn't successful, because a term like successful can be interpreted different ways. I was expecting somebody to argue that he wasn't successful because he only got one juror to change his mind, right? So a lot of people said, "Oh, look, that guy changed his mind, so he's successful, right? And you can argue that. I was surprised that no one said changing one person's vote out of there's still 10 others who say guilty, so I wouldn't call that successful. I was surprised no one took that argument. Um, Remember, whenever you get prompts like this that are asking you to agree or disagree, you can kind of break down the keywords in the prompt, and interpret them how you want. In this case, successful was like a word that could be interpreted and argued in different ways. All right, today we're going to get out of the book, and we're going to learn more about, we're going to read an article that's going to better help us understand the characters in the book and the what the people are going through, specifically the witnesses. We're going to read an article that was in Time magazine called "You Have No Idea What Happened." This is actually a pretty long article, so I cut it and I only assigned you the first 7 paragraphs. We'll read the other half next week, but I didn't want to throw too much at you. So today we're just going to get a good idea for the main point that the author is trying to prove, in this article. Oh, my bad. It wasn't in Time magazine. It was in the New Yorker. All right. So let's take a look at the questions that are going to be that you're going to be asked. Okay. The first one we're going to do together about what's a flashbulb memory. It's going to talk about the Challenger explosion. The Challenger explosion happened long before you were born. Actually, today is my birthday, and my mom vividly remembers the Challenger explosion because, let me see the date. I'm pretty sure she was pregnant with me when it happened, and she was pregnant with me. This Challenger explosion happened January 28th, 1986. I was born April 10th, 1986, but she always remembers it because it was a really exciting day for the country. There was a space shuttle going off into space. There was a teacher on board who, the first teacher the teacher that had become an astronaut. Um, there was thousands of people there to watch, and like almost every classroom across the country was watching on live TV. And the Challenger took off, and then it exploded. Um, there was a there was an error. There was some faulty parts, connecting the fuel tank, and some fuel started to leak out and catch on fire, and it caused the whole fuel tank to erupt. So if you want to see that, you can Google it easily, the Challenger explosion. But it was a really traumatic day because so many people were watching, and a lot of kids were really confused about what they just saw. Obviously none of the astronauts survived. But this is going to be an article around what our brains do. Here's your focus question. We're gonna be learning about what scientists learn about our memories of major or traumatic events. Right, the Challenger explosion was a major and a traumatic event for a lot of people. So what we're thinking about while we read our focus questions is, what do our minds do well in traumatic moments, and what do they do poorly? And a traumatic moment, guys, trauma um, is like a big event, and usually like a scary or negative event, right? So let's do the first part together. Again, our first question is going to be, which of these memories would more likely to be a quote flashbulb memory? All right, so let's read together the first couple paragraphs and figure out what a flashbulb memory is. You Have No Idea What Happened by Maria Konnikova, The New Yorker. RT first heard about the Challenger explosion. And there's a one next to it, guys, because remember, that's like, it's letting you know there's a reference if you want to know a little bit more about that term. RT first heard about the Challenger explosion as she and her classmates sat watching television in their Emory University dorm room. A news flash came across the screen, shocking them both. RT, visibly upset, raced upstairs to tell another friend the news. Then she called her parents. 2.5 years after the event, she remembered it as if it were yesterday. The TV, the terrible news, the call home. She could say with absolute certainty that that's precisely how it happened. Except, it turns out, none of what she remembered was accurate. We haven't seen that term flashbulb memory yet, so let's keep going. RT was a student in a class taught by Ulrich Neisser, a cognitive psychologist who had begun studying memory in the 70s. Cognitive psychologist, guys, anything that's cognitive has to do with your brain. So he's a psychologist that studies the brain. Early in his career, Neisser became fascinated by the concept of flashbulb memories, the times when a shocking emotional event seems to leave a particularly vivid imprint on the mind. William James had described such impressions in 1890 as, quote, so exciting emotionally as almost to leave a scar upon our cerebral tissues or our brain. All right, so we got our definition for a flashbulb memory. Times when a shocking emotional event seems to leave a particularly vivid imprint on the mind. So, which of these events would be shocking and would leave a vivid imprint on our mind? Getting an F on a test? Riding a bike with no training wheels for the first time? Or your house burning down? Pick your answer and then explain, prove it. Prove how your selection is a flashbulb memory? So to do that, you're probably going to need to define what a flashbulb memory and then connect it to the option that you picked. All right. I'm going to leave you there to finish the article on your own. You got a couple more questions. Was RT's memory of where she was when the Challenger exploded accurate? How confident were the students in the accuracy of their memories of the Challenger explosion? How accurate were they, I should say? How accurate were they actually? Right? So I want you to, right here, this is the difference between confidence and actual results. Yeah, let me reword that question so it's a little more clear. What were the actual results, right? So there's a difference. You're going to find there's a difference between how confident they were that they remembered it and how well they actually remembered it. And the big question, another big last question, what do our brains get right when remembering big events, and what do they get wrong? Okay, I'm going to go back into the article, and any tricky words I see, I'm going to go ahead and highlight them and leave a comment on the side to give definitions that I think might help you out. All right, that's my gift to you on my birthday. Look at me, I'm giving out gifts to my favorite 6th grade students. You guys have a great weekend. You have until Sunday night to get this assignment turned in, okay? Also, be on the lookout for an announcement around Mr. Calabrese's office hours because they're going to be on a different time on Fridays, and they're also going to be a little bit shorter and combined with math. So be on the lookout for Mr. Calabrese's announcements around office times. And you guys have a good weekend. Make sure you get your work done. Make sure you get your 30 minutes logged into Lexia. But other than that, enjoy yourself, stay safe, and I will see you guys Monday.